Hello there, and welcome to today's webcast, Success Stories and Best Practices for Cloud-Based Operations Management. I'm Otto Dahl, Senior Fellow with the Center for Digital Government, and I'm excited to serve as the host for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have a great session over the next hour. Before we dive into the content, I wanted to share a few brief housekeeping notes. We will email a link to the recording of this presentation to all registrants within 48 hours. Please use the recording for your reference or feel free to pass it along to colleagues. We've designed this webcast to be interactive, and you can participate in Q&A with us by submitting your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom left of the presentation panel. Send in your questions as they come up throughout the presentation, and we'll address as many of them as possible during the Q&A portion. For those of you interested in downloading a copy of the slides, you can do so by clicking the Webinar Resources widget at the bottom of the console. Also, during today's webcast, you will be able to connect with your peers via LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. For those of you on Twitter, please use hashtag GovTechLive to share key takeaways, quotes, and learnings from today's webcast. At the close of the webcast, we'll encourage you to complete a brief survey about the presentation. We'd like to hear what you think. If you are unable to stay with us for the entire webcast but would like to complete the survey, simply click the survey widget at the bottom of the screen to launch the survey. Otherwise, it will automatically pop up as soon as the webcast concludes. At this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. If you are experiencing any media issues or have any other technical problems, please visit our webcast help guide by clicking on the help button at the bottom of the console. Joining me today are Tom Gaines, who's the Director of Central Services, Grant County, Washington. Tom Gaines served over 24 years with the U.S. Navy, retiring in 2010 as a Chief Petty Officer from a Reserve Patrol Squadron based at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. His career as an air crewman included acting as the leading Chief Petty Officer in the Operations Department and as the primary technical evaluator for air crewmen for nearly 10 years. Tom earned his Washington State Journeyman Plumber certification in 1995. Licensed at one point in 4 different states working on commercial and industrial projects, he worked throughout the Northwest for over 20 years as a plumber, pipe fitter, foreman, and superintendent. Currently, as the Central Services Director for Grant County, Washington, he oversees multiple departments and their budgets, including facilities, maintenance, and technical services. Tom manages the bidding and management of capital projects, energy services, performance-based contracts, the day-to-day operations of multiple departments, and contracted services with numerous vendors. Also with us today is Chris Phillips, Development Services Director, City of Mount Vernon, Washington. Chris Phillips served 30 years in the U.S. Navy, where he attained the rank of captain. His last assignment was leading a diverse staff of over 9,000 sailors, 2,000 Department of Navy civilians, and numerous contracts in the day-to-day operations for Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. From 2014 to 2016, he has served as the Maquito, Washington City Administrator, currently serves as the Mount Vernon, Washington Development Services and Facility Director. Chris has over 25 years of experience in facility maintenance management. The flow today is going to be one of, we're going to set the stage of the operations landscape, and then we're going to meet with our speakers to hear more from them about where they're coming from. And then we're going to move into a fireside chat where we'll talk about best practices and their success stories in cloud-based operations management. We'll finish with a brief comment about how one can own your operations, and we will conclude with about 10 minutes of Q&A. So again, as you go through the presentation, please send in your Q&A questions, and we will address those in the last 10 minutes of today's session. So in order to set the stage, let's bring in Damian Subanya, who's the current Director of Industry and Product Marketing for Dude Solutions, to discuss the operations landscape and government. All yours, Damian.
Thanks, Otto, and welcome everyone. I'm just going to spend a few minutes introducing the topic and helping to set the stage, and I'll hand it over to Tom and Chris to talk about their real-life experiences and hopefully bring a lot of this home. But if you look at the operations management landscape today, our experience in working with clients in the industry is that it's disconnected, it's fragmented, it's heterogeneous, and it's unevenly distributed. And that's certainly true on the infrastructure and technology front, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But it really extends beyond technology. And the way we think about it is, operations management today is really this delicate patchwork operation that involves multiple dimensions that you have to juggle as an operations leader. There's the people and the culture dimension, and whether you're a facilities director, a public works director, CIO, CFO, or maybe a city manager, you have teams that are diverse, they're multicultural, multi-generational. In fact, for the first time in history, we've got 5 generations working side by side, each with different leadership and communication styles. And of course, teams are generally lean, and you've got people wearing multiple hats. And you also have a workforce that's aging and retiring at rapid rates, and that's the challenge we probably hear about most often from clients is the skilled trade labor shortage that's taking place, and that's certainly a dynamic as well. And you can also look at culture apart from the people aspect. There's the context or the environment in which local and county governments operate, and some of the limitations around funding, resources, timing, et cetera. And on the infrastructure and technology front, which is where we're going to spend most of our time today, you have a mix of paper-based processes, particularly in some of the smaller municipalities and counties. You have legacy on-premise systems that require manual process and a lot of heavy lifting. And you've got cloud deployments as well, although generally speaking, it's still fairly early in the software as a service adoption cycle in the public sector. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have more sophisticated cloud services models. You've got digital platforms. There's the Internet of Things, or IoT. You've got smart city initiatives spinning up, where you're really relying on middleware technology, sensors, smart meters to provide data in near real time so you can make smarter decisions faster. And the fact is that most of us are somewhere in the middle of this technology continuum, and we're being asked to make the most of what we have and to weave the right fabric, if you will, for our organization. And that's really the bigger context of culture and people that we have to navigate. And so on the technology front, innovation is certainly happening, but it's uneven. It's happening in pockets and spurts. And the question is, how do you put the right foundation and the right processes in place to really take advantage of the innovation that's taking place in the industry? And how do you digest that innovation in a way that's right for your county or municipality? And, it's interesting, technology and data are really forcing the issue because they're moving connectedness to the forefront across all of the dimensions that we just touched on. We live in a data-rich environment. We now have smart alerts. We have things like self-healing systems. Data sharing is enabling more intelligent operations and even smarter decisions. We have connected ecosystems. We've got smart relationships between entities, and this really shows up in smart city initiatives. And the question is, again, how do you adapt and work within the constraints of your environment to adopt some of these technologies in greater measure in a way that makes sense for you. So here's one way to look at the operations management evolution, how it's evolving. And it's not necessarily a linear evolution, but you can certainly look at it as a continuum. So from paper-based processes to in work to software as a service and commercial off-the-shelf or COTS deployments to more progressive initiatives like smart cities and IoT. But I mentioned earlier that most of us are somewhere in the middle of this continuum, and it's really the interplay of these three elements or dimensions and navigating that interplay that presents both the challenge and the opportunity to use technology as a lever to make the most of your environment in order to better serve your staff and the citizen. And I'll end on this slide. Putting the right foundation and process in place paves the way for operational efficiencies that can have meaningful business outcomes for both your staff and the citizen community. And this involves, again, navigating that people and culture element that I mentioned earlier, making the best of quality data, and leveraging the right technology in the right way to drive operational efficiencies. And again, those efficiencies, as you gain those efficiencies, they really can drive citizen trust and sentiment and perception, and they can also help drive revenue for the municipality or county with things like community development and other growth initiatives. So with that, I'm going to briefly turn it over to our the first of our featured speakers, Tom, who will give you a little bit of background on himself, his role and experience, and the journey he's currently on as far as operations management goes. Tom, I'll hand it to you.
Well, thank you, and good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Gaines. I'm the Central Services Director with Grant County, Washington, if anybody knows where that is, right in the middle of the state, on the dry side of the state. The years of experience there, I've had about just under 7 prior to going into the county to work for a public agency. I was a journeyman plumber in the commercial and industrial sector working in private enterprise. A lot of my experience there was in healthcare and heavy industrial sites, large commercial sites, very, very little residential. And along with that, I was active duty for a number of years in the U.S. Navy, but became a very active reservist for about 20 years with the Naval Reserve, flying in the maritime patrol community. As a matter of fact, if go back to when Otto had introduced all of us earlier, they'd mentioned that Chris oversaw about 9,000 sailors. I would have been one of those sailors over there at NAS Whidbey Island. The current challenges that we face are, as they alluded to earlier, a lack of manpower. It's very difficult to find skilled trades, especially that want to go to work for a public agency. We don't necessarily compete with salaries in the private enterprise. The initiatives that we are focused on, our security of our data is really important as we go to more cloud-based. We're about 1/3 of our operations are in the cloud, and we're our own cloud at the county. So, data security and data integrity are, of course, huge to us. And being as efficient as we can and the best public stewards we can. Every day we're out there trying to do as much preventative maintenance and being as proactive as we can, and using cloud-based technologies has really, really helped us do that. When I came to the county, they were literally doing maintenance with yellow sticky notes and phone messages. They even billed other departments with yellow sticky notes. So moving, it was quite a leap in technology for Grant County when we started using software as a service. And I look forward to Q&A and the fireside chat and getting to hear what other people have to say. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Hey, thanks, Tom, for the intro, and good morning, everybody. I would say, Tom, it seems like you were actually spent some time in Mount Vernon, Washington, because a lot of the things that you had just talked about there were very similar actions or viewpoint of how we are dealing with things here. I inherited. So just by the background, I kind of look at things a little slightly differently than maybe some folks, and that is just due to the background of my experience. As you heard in the bio, 30-year Navy vet, and the majority of my time has been spent in maintenance, and whether that was maintenance of aircraft, I'm a pilot by trade, but also just the background of how we went about going and doing business, of what I've taken from the military and then what I would say civilianized it, and how Dude Solutions has helped facilitate that. So from the Navy side of the house, it was like running a city. It was, again, we had a housing of about 250 units. I dealt with housing, plumbers, mechanics, and things of that nature, builders. On the other side of it, I had probably close to 70 or 80 different facilities located on the base with a variety of challenges with it. Our budget was usually not an issue. It was close to $500 million that we had coming in there to run the base. But as it related to facilities, that was about a $15 million. As it related to maintenance, preventative maintenance activities, that was about $5 million bucks with that. A lot of that work was contracted out. And then new construction. So that was something that was there that ranged from year to year with our annual military budget. It could went from 10 to over $100 million with a variety of things. And that could be streets, it could be stormwater, it could be a variety of environmental factors that came into that. It was the whole myriad of effort there. Once I retired, I was a city administrator down in Mukilteo, and similarly, as I kind of assessed the situation there, was facilities, and they were basically doing things in a very target-rich environment with deferred maintenance. The deferred maintenance list was just amazing, to the tune of $5 to $10 million for a small community. Similarly, when I came to Mount Vernon, the story was pretty much the same thing. And what we had looked to do was looking at things from a strategic, an operational, and a tactical way of going and doing business, with outlining roles, responsibility, effective communications with the team, going up and down and sideways throughout the chain of command, as well as having a flexible plan, a long-range plan, and not being emotionally tied to it, just due to the fact that we didn't allocate the money. That came from council, and I just had to be happy with what they provided me, and then coming up with a game plan of executing that and providing a level of transparency to be able to show what we did for the taxpayer and making sure that we were good stewards for the taxpayer. And that transparency has really led to our success story, which would be, we had about a $50,000 budget before I got here for long range and facility maintenance management, and we were able to turn that into a good news story of getting somewhere between $400,000 to $500,000 a year for large-term projects that needed to get done. And we're in that season right now of building a budget, and it looks like we're still going to get somewhere between $350,000 to $450,000 to attack that. So with that, I will turn it back over to Otto.
Yeah, thanks, Chris and Tom. Let's talk about some subjects in this whole area of operations management. And I think really the first thing I'd like to tackle is in the area of government. Obviously, we're involved and want to make use of technology. We see technology as a viable means to what we need to accomplish for our jurisdictions. And so, Tom, I'd like to start with you. Since technology is changing so rapidly, how is this impacting local and county government?
Well, it's very impactful. We've at Grant County, we performed a major upgrade in the last 3 years of our data center just to bring us up to date and to build efficiencies. You really have to work hard to find vendors that can help you achieve your goals. And we are our own cloud and provide some limited services to local partners or community partners. So we do worry about the impact of the Internet of Things and the threats of ransomware and the changing threat landscape. I think there was a story just 3 weeks ago. There was a coordinated attack that affected 23 different local municipalities in the state of Texas. Baltimore and Atlanta were kind of the first two to see these coordinated attacks on multiple jurisdictions. So it's impacting government. Data integrity and data security are so important to what we do. One of the things that we've done is we've tackled our IT environment. We've added a lot of security. All of these things come with a cost. We've implemented a quadrennial budget that allows us to forecast things, our assets out, and we can get that funded, and we can track that, and we can replace things every 3, 4, or 5 years and know that we're going to stay with the most current technology. We've also put the IT and the facilities team under the same roof, and that's been a game changer from interoperability. It's really helped us build out internally without having to go out to bid and use a lot of local contractors. A lot of things that we didn't know that we had those capabilities because those teams never spoke with each other. Now they're of the same fabric, and that's been a huge game changer for us.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Does that?
Yeah, I think that gives folks a good sense. Wanted to ask Chris, in the area of operations management, how have you seen it evolve in recent years, and what do you think are the key trends that are on the horizon?
Great question. What I've seen in both the military and civilian side is just the evolution of operations management going from a paper storage type system, and each 3 areas that I've worked in, we've gone from paper to some amount of a computer server storage, as Tom was related, and now going to a cloud-based paperless way, and finding, as he mentioned, the right vendors that can help you along that way. We've been able to take our work orders, again, which was via email, phone call, sticky, and really use Dude Solutions to help automate that. That right now we're utilizing Android and iPhones, for our custodial team that's out there. So as they get work orders, they can fix them immediately out on the fly, provide updates via the Android phone while they're out actually working, providing virtual updates through that, also contacting our vendors or any of our consultants that may be helping us along the way, because some of the things may be above what our staff can do. That also goes into PMs, preventative maintenance actions. We sat down and figured out which ones we could do on our own, which ones we needed to contract out, making sure that the vendors that we had coming in to work with us could provide the same level of service that we wanted as it related to going paperless, and making sure, again, that the data was able to be stored in one place and make sure that it was concise and actionable. The last part got into our facility renewal projects, which Tom and I have a similar role in this too, is that, I do the RFPs, I create them, I go through the bid processes, and when it comes to the awarding of those, I'm the one who's doing the project management for those, and as well, emails are nice, over communication as far as that, but also really utilizing the Dude, the facility or capital equipment module in there really is very something that we use often. One of the things, old habits are hard to break here. We still conduct a morning maintenance meeting to kind of understand what the priorities that are out there. We meet in our conference room, call up the Dude, look at the work orders that are up there. Team provides updates on what they're doing, and provides updates throughout the day. And then really it comes into over and open communication between all layers of the facility team in order to accomplish mission.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. As both of you said, I really think it shows how we're infusing technology into our operations that obviously we've been doing many, many years, well before computerization could help us. And so those most definitely we're seeing benefits from that. I'd like to explore next the area of best practices. And, Tom, what are some of the best practices for adopting cloud technologies, tools, and for operations, and what are some of the key criteria that you guys use for selecting the right partner or vendor in accomplishing that?
Sure. So that's kind of a loaded question. Over a third of our county operations are in the cloud, and we regularly manage the migration of data between the local working environment and the cloud. The right vendor, you really have to think about it. They can't necessarily be a salesman. there's so much snake oil out there. It needs to start with a vision of what you want to manage and what makes your department or a department within your organization more efficient. While you're also, all of these cloud-based products cost money, you want to be the best steward of public funds that you can be. I think we take each piece of software or operation that we're going to move to the cloud, and we ask how it's backed up, what are their redundancies, and where are their redundancies. I know that was when we started using the Dude, we were really impressed about the way that they backed up their data. It was really important at the time. We hadn't merged our IT and facilities departments, and our IT department, or the former director, was actually had a big role in selecting Dude solutions, and he was really impressed. How are you going to, what's it going to look like when you have a problem with a software as a service vendor? What's it going to take to solve a problem? These are all questions that we ask. To what extent are we involved in solving problems after we migrate to the cloud? We are big believers in not moving a problem to the cloud. We want to move to the cloud to solve a problem as a solution. Excuse me. Our vendors by and large have our backs, and they're seriously dedicated to us, the client. And some instances they have to prove that to us quite a bit. We're limited in choice. In county government, it's unique. I work for a board of county commissioners, but I don't really have any control over the treasurer, the prosecutor, the assessor. These are separate elected officials, and they're like mini sovereign nations, but the nature of our work transcends that, and it affects all of these different elected officials. So by creating policies that, ensure that our IT department is they work with these outside departments, and we help them with their selections. We help them with vetting the software, and we really do a lot of the heavy work with critiquing the vendors that we select. And by doing this, we've got our own internal checklists. How do these vendors help us? How are they backing up their data? How do we get to that data if we have a data loss problem? And we have found some really incredible vendors along the way. Those are some of our best practices.
Cool. I think that data quality and analytics play a major role in things, and I'm curious, Chris, what role you see that data quality and analytics playing in driving the smarter, more efficient operations, and in better engaging in the ultimate customer, the resident?
Sure. Yeah, I think, again, it goes off of what I said at the previous question. Is really we've utilized the Android and iPhones to manage our process and provide updates, as well as ordering parts and work status updates. I think, again, the strategic imperative in all this is the data entry piece, the content of what our work team is doing out in the field, that it must be concise. The information that they share is critical. It's required to ensure the completeness of a job or the ordering of parts that go along with that. And to a greater degree, this data that's getting entered into the Dude, Dude AI is also utilizing it to be better predictors of a variety of things, whether it's working with your HVAC system or your boilers or something like that, because it's feeding data from all customers, all database in there. So this is one thing that I express to our team, is that it's extremely important to provide as much information in there as possible, because it's helping other municipalities, other customers, other counties and things that are out there, both in the private and public sector. Another idea here, again, I'm not probably telling anybody anything they don't already know, is measuring a few times and cutting once. The idea that we don't have to have analysis by paralysis, but by the same time, let's take our time and really think about what it is that we're doing, and so that at the end of the day, we're spending less time and we're really building our best business practices. The last one, or last few items here, is providing a seamless, visibility to all layers of the facility team. Nobody needs to ask questions really if we're following the earlier comments with, providing information in, or it makes it much easier during our maintenance meetings in the morning and the afternoon. We're following the information that's going in there. If there are questions, we're able to go ahead and handle them. So meetings that used to take a half an hour or more or less maybe 5 or 10 minutes just to provide status updates, and we're moving out. So we're saving us time, our team's time, but also the customer. So these are both internal and external customers here, is that we have a building manager program, because our campus, if you will, where we have public buildings, are spread out throughout the entire city. And I have certain folks who are putting in work orders throughout the day. They will get automatic updates as to where the status is for their particular projects, and they'll get the email prompt to be able to check that out. So again, it's making them, I guess, worry less about what the facility staff is doing, that they know that we're doing our best effort and we're keeping them involved in all that we do.
Nice. Thanks, Chris. Want to change our orientation a little bit here and talk about our efforts in accomplishing this in the way that what are some of the key benefits of a platform approach to operations management, and how do you get started with all of this? And Tom, can you give us some insights?
Sure. I think getting started, you have to have kind of a vision of where you want to go, recognizing the needs that you have, the shortcomings that you have, and talking about those with your teams, so you can figure out, this is where we are now, but this is where we want to be. If we're going to be the best steward of the public funds, and we're going to be excellent at taking care of our customers and our buildings, then this is where we need to go. And some of the key benefits that we've found from a platform approach are the dedicated support that we get. Prior to do a shameless plug to Dude Solutions, I would tell you that they have become much more than just a partner for Grant County. They have proven themselves to be ingrained in what our goals and visions are, and I continually get help from them. They want to see me succeed, and that's incredibly important for me. So that's a major benefit for me. The software, it needs to be well built and proven software, and it's got a lot of built-in efficiencies. I'm not having to reinvent the wheel. This stuff is this platform approach. This stuff is done, and it's proven, and you can reach out and speak with other public agencies. I think a lot in the public agency world, a lot of our issues are the same. It's just scalable, where I might be a small county, and Mount Vernon might be a somewhat small city, but Los Angeles is a huge city, and they've got elevators and rules to follow just the same as we do as a public agency. So that platform approach, if you're networking and this stuff is proven, then you're just days ahead of where you could be if you were doing it yourself. And recognizing that need, getting started, recognizing the efficiencies and savings, be it labor or finance or both. Communicating openly with your teams, and a big rule with me is check your ego at the door. Speak openly to best solve your problems. No problem is bigger than any of us, and none of us have solved the greatest problem in the world. So let's all speak openly and make sure that we're putting that customer and that client and that public agency first. And provide good leadership and support to all the folks who will be implementing and managing the change. It's inevitable, but I tell everybody change is opportunity. It's not a bad thing. You just have to look at it as an opportunity to get better and be excellent.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Chris, can you expand on the benefit of integrating solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think has helped out the two municipalities that I worked in is really a different methodology of going and figuring out, our overall plan, what we were going to do. One of the things I mean by this is flattening the organization. Everybody has an equal voice. and trying to figure out exactly, where we currently are, and as Tom mentioned, what is our desired end state, and then coming up together with a gap analysis to get us from where we are to where we want to go. With that, the benefit of integration, I kind of go back to my Navy days, is we train like we fight. Repetitive actions, repetitive ways of doing business kind of equal muscle memory, and once the team is on board with that particular change, then things become very beneficial. One of the things that we do here in Mount Vernon is we conduct an annual material condition rating. There's well over 1,500 pieces of capital equipment that we look at and ensure on an annual basis that we know the PMs are being done, we know the work orders are being done, and we do a top-to-bottom review of all of the capital equipment in there. As we're going through the budget time, as all of us are going through right now, I have no idea what council's going to do, but I anticipate it's going to be somewhere between a certain figure, which then will help me go back to my 2019 facility renewal plan where I've got priority 1 through priority 4 activities going on and figuring out what I can do with the limited funds that I have because of all the deferred maintenance. So this kind of goes into our capital improvement plan and a few other things. So once I've got that, it really goes in from that annual plan to quarterly, monthly, and daily execution, being able to sit down and have lessons learned to different things that we're doing, because again, certain vendors, if it's below a certain amount, we can go and use. If it's above a certain dollar amount, we've got to go out with the bids and get 3 bids to get things done, and then train to those lessons learned, and then again go back to creating an annual plan, rinse, and repeat. So that's pretty much what's worked for us. The other thing is that work orders help inform PM schedules. PM schedules inform, routine maintenance, which then inform facility renewal efforts that are there. And then it just becomes an opportunity for me during committee meetings to convince council what is required to be accomplished, and then convince them to see that the funding that would be required really is essential for the running of the city.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. The last area I'd like to explore is dealing with, how does one drive ultimately the results? I think both of you have talked to this to some degree, and how do you secure those resources that are necessary? So I'll start with you, Tom, and what you use to define success in operations management, and just how do you measure that success?
Sure. So I think everybody will have a slightly different perception of success. We're putting out fewer fires because we're becoming more proactive instead of reactive. Like in the city of Mount Vernon, when I came to Grant County, the deferred maintenance list, we didn't really have a list because everything was deferred maintenance. So getting ahead of that is definitely a success defining moment when we're we're at 40% or 50% of our PM to preventative maintenance to reactive maintenance ratio now. It takes years to build that up, and it's great when I can sit down on a quarterly basis or even on a yearly basis, so when I can sit down with the Grant County Commissioners and say, look, this is where we were and this is where we are. And in our asset management, one of our ways to tell success is when I can say, instead of me sitting here during our budget time and asking you for $1 million, I can now forecast everything out, and we've been able to sort of load balance the dollars over the next few years, and we have an action plan, much like the city of Mount Vernon does, for addressing all of this deferred maintenance. So we're being more successful in our budget planning. We have a less stressed workforce. People aren't showing up for work wondering what fires they're going to put out. They actually have a plan. They actually have, this is what we're doing today. And now our fires are, here and there instead of every day. It's definitely, that's a shown success story for us. And we're getting recognition from outside entities. Hey, this place is looking great. Nice job. Your facilities team is doing great. We get compliments about our technology from our law enforcement. You guys have really got us set up nice, and we don't have the issues we did before. And we're seeing our budget growth slow down. We're not having to ask for as much money, and we don't have these large spikes. And seeing our teams, now that we have, a really good program in place to address all this stuff, seeing them actually take ownership in the environment. They all have a legacy at the courthouse. It's a historic building among our other buildings, and we continually ask ourselves, what's our legacy going to be, when we leave here? What did we do? So those are some of the ways that we measure success.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Chris, how do we, or specifically, how do you and your organization secure the funding to implement a modern operations management platform?
Oh, sure thing. Hey, one thing I wanted to just dovetail off of what Tom said on that last question is I've seen the same results in our group and when it comes to the workforce. With the plan, I can tell you they are definitely less stressed. They're definitely more motivated. There's a sense of ownership because, again, I talk about, I got the traditional chain of command, but when it comes to problem solving, we kind of flatten the organization and everybody's got an equal voice, from me, the director, custodian, or the maintenance tech, maintenance tech one. It's all one team, one fight to get it done. And, the idea, and it's cliche, but, make the place better than you found it. And I tell you, they have taken all of that on board because, again, the proof is in the pudding. It's trust and confidence, I think, up and down the chain, and then chain of command, that is, and then laterally between workers. It really has built a cohesive, more cohesive workforce. And I'll tell you how that's reflected. Number one was just dealing with monthly updates to leadership. So I get an hour of power with the mayor each month, but I also get an opportunity to talk to the council members. And we do a development services committee, or it could be during a councilmatic action. So they are getting information, and it's maybe over-communicating. But a lot of times I find that, and hopefully if there are electeds that are on this, don't take this the wrong way. Sometimes, they're busy and don't necessarily read everything you do, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. With the folks out there with the Android phones or the iPhones and being able to take pictures with what they're doing, again, uploading it into the Dude, shooting it via email, I'm able to share all that information like real time as a facility update, to the council members and the mayor. And that really is a wonderful attribute that this provides. The other thing that we do is kind of like a 360-degree evaluation is we do facility surveys. So, we get out, we do a survey, we've got, nothing onerous, 5-10 questions, maybe take somebody a total of 5 minutes or so to get in there, but it helps us better serve them. And we do that through all the facilities that we own here. The email list just goes out, go online, takes them 5 minutes, and we take that survey information and just see how we can do things better. It could be a communication issue, it could be a variety of things, but that really has served us well. We train our building managers. So again, I'm spread out, not quite as bad as a county or a state, but again, people work in different places. And I want to make sure I take the training to them to just show them how easy it is with the Dude to be able to put in a work order. 5 steps and you're done. And we can tailor that because I've got admin rights on the back end to change things as those survey information comes in. So again, trying to make it easier so that the customer actually wants to go in and use the Dude. If they use the Dude and we actually do it correctly and get back to them in time with information, that they're more likely to use it again. And we have found that to be true all the way across the board. The other thing is to demonstrate the leadership that the cost of, and I got here in a capital not, having an active maintenance plan is basically the worst plan that you could have. If you're waiting for things to break, you're doing it wrong. And we've shown that, just like Tom has mentioned, the proof's in the pudding, is that we're being able to show them by actually having an active preventative maintenance plan and sticking to that there are less emergent issues that we have coming on when stuff is breaking. And I've been able to show that with the information that we've entered into the Dude to be able to extract that and then show it to council of why it's so important to do that. That doesn't take away from, like I mentioned, the $10 to $12 million worth of deferred maintenance that I had out there on capital equipment, but at least it provides a dialogue for them to show them and demonstrate to them that it does work. And that's, like I said, been the way that we've been able to secure our budget.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for those insightful thoughts. I think it really shows what you can do by leveraging technology to improve an operations management within organizations, which again is something that we've always had to do, we'll always have to do in the future, and technology really can be a useful tool. With that being said, I'd like to bring Damien back on, and he's got a few words he'd like to talk about. You've heard a lot or mention about Dude Solutions, and let him sort of tie this package up before we get to Q&A. So again, I'll encourage the audience to submit your questions, and we'll get those to our speakers here shortly. Damien?
Thanks, Otto. So I'm just going to quickly tee up the one poll question that we have, and I love some of the references that Tom and Chris have made specifically to Dude Solutions and some of our offerings. But Dude Solutions is actually one of the first companies to move operations management into the cloud back in 2000. And 20 years later, we have more than 12,000 clients, and we have a tremendous data set. We're adding a work order to our system every second, and I think it's an asset every 10 seconds. But we've got this tremendous source of data that we've been building over 20 years, and I love the reference Chris made to predictive operations and using data to make smarter decisions, to make more confident and statistically relevant projections. That's really the benefit of data. It's the transparency, but it's also the insight to make the right decisions and to make them faster. And that's really the journey we're on, and that's the journey the industry's on. But what we found is, you've got some of the solutions that we offer here on the site. But what we found is that, most of our clients have challenges in all of these areas. You can pick your starting point. You heard a lot today about work and asset management and some of the benefits of that. Things like preventive maintenance schedules and getting off paper and gaining efficiencies there and having your staff know what they're doing. I love the references Chris made to motivation, ownership, how quick it is to create a work order. And if you're after transparency, you've got to tackle the deferred maintenance, work and asset management is probably a great place to start. And of course, there's also the opportunity to give your requesters a very nice, clean, web-based experience to let you know about any issues that you need to solve for. But there are other areas where we help clients solve challenges. For instance, energy. There's a tremendous opportunity to shore up energy consumption and understand usage and spikes and eliminate waste and build a culture of conservation and sustainability. And we work with a number of clients to help them better understand how they're using energy and what that cost looks like, and help them identify opportunities to save. I'll mention community development as well. So this is solutions for online permitting, licensing, code enforcement, giving citizens a portal where they can submit a permit request and have that be routed in the right way and passed to all of the right parties and stakeholders in the process, and really reducing the time to resolution to within a day or less. And we've got many clients who've been on a journey where it's taken months and sometimes longer to resolve permits, and this is a quick way to do it, and it's cloud-based. So there are different starting points and different ways to tackle some of these challenges. But the one poll question is, are there is there a specific area that you would like to hear more about, just based on what you've heard today, where you think you might want to get started in terms of maturing your cloud implementation or thinking about solutions to these problems in maybe a more innovative or integrated way? So I'm just going to give folks a few seconds here to select anything that might be of interest, where we could connect with you and talk with you a little bit more about some of these specific solutions, and then we'll move to the Q&A portion with Otto.
Hey, Damien, while we have a little bit of dead time, this is Chris from Mount Vernon. We also, in my department, have the community development. So SmartGov, we've been utilizing now for over a year. So if anybody's out there in the virtual world and wants to know about that permitting side of the house, we are Duke customers there too.
Fantastic.
Well, I'll have to echo that and say so is Grand County. My planning director is a user of SmartGov, and we look forward to seeing how that evolves in the near future.
That's terrific. So with that, let's go ahead and move to the live Q&A. Otto, I'll hand things back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. Got a number of questions here, and I'll queue up the first one here. We got Cheryl asking, how does your ERP system mix with this?
I'm gonna assume this is Tom from Grand County. I'm gonna assume that by ERP she's talking about her enterprise resource planning. I use a number of different Dude clients. My capital forecasting client that I use, I'm in that quite regularly. We actually run work orders out of our capital forecasting program. It continually keeps me in tune with my budget planning from year to year to year. I'm not sure if I can exactly answer her question, but the capital forecasting program that we use has, again, been a game changer for us as we've been able to properly forecast our financial needs over the next, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
And Tom, I'll echo in on yours. We use the module as well, and I would just say that you got a few ways to go and integrate this. You could go full ice bucket challenge, which I don't necessarily am not a proponent of. I'm more of a proponent of crawl, walk, run. So the crawl part was just getting people to use work orders. That included our custodial force and our facility workforce to start using it. Once they started using it, there are elements within the work order that can get into the capital forecasting. So again, it's just how are we managing their time and how much time are they spending to do a certain task. The other side of that, the flip is, okay, what are the supplies that you're requiring to do the task? And I agree with Tom that once you start building that data field, it will help you become more predictive as to budgeting. And from that budgeting, then you can be a better steward because there's transparency in it, better steward in being predictive of what it is that you need. Hopefully that helps.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I got Dimitri here asking, what cloud provider did you end up using?
In Grand County, we don't specifically use a cloud provider. We're our own cloud. We provide services to some local community partners. We do use software as a service. We use Dude Solutions. We use I'll plug Ednetics has been one of the best partners we've found from a technology standpoint. So we continue to look for the best vendor we can for those cloud services that we need. We don't necessarily have a single cloud provider.
Yeah, on my end, we're all Dude. So we have another part that I have is parking enforcement that I'm still trying to figure out how it got in development services, but it is. But we went with a different cloud-based system there. So everything that we have in my particular department that used to be server-based is all now cloud-based, and that goes into our code enforcement module, which is through SmartGov and ultimately Dude Solutions, all of the permitting cloud-based through Dude Solutions, and then lastly is the facilities that we're talking now. So my department in 2 to 3 years has gone from use of server to 100% cloud.
Okay, cool. We got Jason here, I think asking for a little bit more information because we talked about, I think his first question, what are the characteristics of the right vendors that you've used? But also, are there regs that you've developed to find vendors that work best for the scale of your efforts?
Well, in Grant County, we haven't developed requisites or any kind of a checklist, but you know, they need to be an active communicator. I can't stand working with a vendor that I have to ping on all the time. I have to call and say, what's going on? I need somebody that's as engaged in my issue as I am. I can tell you that Dude Solutions has always been that way with us. I have regular phone calls with them about how we're efficiently using our software. They want to see me succeed as much as I want to see me succeed. So when you have a vendor like that, I think it's really important. Some of it's a learned process over a period of time. Sometimes you don't jump in knowing they're going to be a perfect vendor, but somebody that, you know, is an active communicator, somebody that isn't calling you because you haven't bought yet. They're going to let you run at your own pace and are willing to work with you to help you solve your problems, even sometimes before purchasing any software. Those are some of the things that we look for.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on to Tom here is that in my municipality, I call it the worst of both worlds, is that we have decentralized procurement processes and we have decentralized procurement execution. So it is the worst of the worst. I wish we had a single point of contact that took care of procurement. What I did here was, after talking to other directors, was, does anybody really want to get into this? And I got everyone basically saying no. So I went and did it. So I went through an introduction to public procurement, kind of got an idea of what the policy was. In Washington State, again, there's a variety of dollar figures that you would have to look at, as well as within the municipal government of what rules and regulations that I had to follow from both finance as well as councilmatic action. So what we ended up doing here was just really making sure that I called it Procurement 101 for Dummies. I put the book together. I took a fusion of both state law, MRSC information that I could get, information from our finance department, as well as the code that we currently had, fused that into one 20-page nice document instead of, it literally was, if you held your hands out 3 inches, it was like that much information, and it just, again, helped folks kind of navigate how to successfully do the contracting piece. Once you do the contracting piece, then there's a little bit of flexibility that we have in municipal government that you don't always have to go with the cheapest vendor. You can always have a way that if you know maybe the cheapest vendor was not necessarily the best one for you, and because you maybe work with someone else and you can see the projects that they've done, you can go with a different vendor. But again, I would imagine from each state it's different. So just my 2 cents in that regard.
Well, and I'm gonna piggyback on that a little bit. If I may. You know, you have to applaud somebody that's done that kind of work like Chris has done. It's in the county. When I came here, there's nobody to train you on how to do public procurement. You just kind of had to figure it out, and it's the same thing. We're decentralized, and we've struggled with, should we have a central purchasing department or not? I think, and I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure down in the city of Yakima County and Yakima City actually partnered to create a centralized purchasing department that fit best for them. So you actually have a county and a city working together to have a centralized purchasing, and that's worked for them. It is difficult, and there are a lot of laws, and navigating that water for public procurement, that gray water, is sometimes difficult to do. In county government, like I talked about earlier, kind of like having all these different islands with the different elected officials, we've had to have policy set in place so that they don't kind of go rogue and just go out and buy stuff. You know, we want to make sure that we're following the RCWs in the state of Washington for public procurement. And so, yeah, I applaud Chris for doing all that work, because it's not easy. There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
One last thing to piggyback on you. Oh. One last thing is that you may find that the county or the state already has a contract, and there's a lot of law that allows a city to piggyback onto a county or the state contract in order to procure things, which is huge as far as a time saver.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I want to be respectful of our commitment, time commitment here, so we're going to have to wrap this up here. In closing, I would just like to thank Tom and Chris and Damien for sharing their insights on today's webcast. And I would also like to thank Dude Solutions for making this possible to have this important webcast discussion today. And thanks to our audience for spending an hour with us. We look forward to seeing you again soon on another government technology event. Have a great rest of your day.